This training series is brought to you by a generous grant from Impact 100 and Autism Pensacola.
Okay, we're back. We're moving on to the next slide, which is to talk about problem solving in your IEP meetings and afterwards. This is an area that I get to help parents with a lot in my job, because usually when they come to me, it's not because things are going fabulously well. It's because they need help and they need it now. So I usually have to start off with dealing with the problem and how do we solve the problem. So we're going to talk a good bit about this, and at the end I can take questions. If you guys have questions in between, please stop me and go, what about that? So let's discuss the basics of problem solving with IEPs, meetings, and teams, and we're going to discuss some of the more common things that I see discussed with parents. And I would encourage you, first and foremost, to make diplomacy your banner. Diplomacy is king, as they say. It's so, so true in this setting as well. Again, you're emotionally invested in your student. You've got maybe some issues with how things have been going, some concerns about how you want it to continue going forward. Maybe you're angry, maybe you're confused, maybe you are fearful about some things that are going on. Whatever's going on, keep in mind diplomacy is the king. Remember that these are the team members that you will likely be working with throughout your child's school experience at that particular school. And with that being said, you can't fire a team member. It might be best to try your best to work with that person, come to some sort of professional relationship that's workable with that person, and understand that if you're, for instance, in elementary school, K through 5, you're going to be with that team member for that long, possibly. And then what if they take a job at the middle school in 6th grade when your child promotes up? You see where I'm going with this? Consider that these are the people you're always going to have with your child. That's a great way of looking at it, that these are the people who are going to follow your child and you with this team. How are you going to make it a workable team? Some of the changes are going to have to come from you. You get me? So you got to start thinking about, we are it. This is what's going to make a difference for my child educationally, the people in that room. So make sure that you're getting them invested in your child as well. And you're coming to agreements, you're able to talk about things, you're not arguing and adversarial all the time. It's not us and them. It should be team. It's easier said than done, and I understand that, but there are ways to get to that point. What I encourage you to do is to learn how to rephrase criticism. That's one of the first things I want to teach you. When you hear the word but, you did a great job, but, what do you hear?
Criticism.
Yeah. What did I do wrong? Yeah, you don't hear, you did this great. You hear the but, you did this. What's the obvious assumption? You did this wrong. So when we're talking to adults on our team, we want to use a different approach. We don't want to put our team members on the defense. We want to invite our team members to agree with us. You hear what I'm saying to you? You want to bring them to you. You don't want to push them away from you. It's easy to do to have a knee-jerk reaction to say, I don't like that, or I don't agree with that. You're maybe not saying that exactly that way, but your attitude can say that. Your word choice can say that. So on the screen you see an example of how to approach the team with a positive response as far as criticism goes. I tell parents, I say and now, not but. And I'll give you an example of that. I'm going to use one of my children. Say, Bryce, you did a great job of clipping the bushes in the front yard, but you could have worked really a little bit better on trimming around the trees with the weed eater, which he doesn't use the weed eater, by the way. So what he's going to hear is, I don't like how you did the trimming around the trees. He's not going to remember that I said, you did a great job on the bushes. How I might rephrase that to be more positive and get action from him, get a positive response from him, is to say this: Bryce, I really liked how you trimmed the bushes, and now let's talk about how we can improve on trimming around the trees. Do you see what I did there? It's the same criticism, but it's reworded in a way that invites him to discuss it with me, invites him to agree with me. He's not on the defensive. We're now in a team discussion about it. It's respectful, but it gets the same result, hopefully, that we need to make improvements in this area. So when you're talking to your team, you can say, well, I really like how we implemented this goal, instead of saying, but I feel like we need to improve services or increase or whatever the criticism is. Say, and now can we please talk about how to do this? It's like, oh, okay. We can talk about that. So say, and now, not but. I also want to encourage you, this is another area that I hear over and over again with parents and teachers, is to beware of the trap of what's called faulty thinking. And what I mean by that is where you are not quite focused on how to solve the problem. You're focused on the problem and how to augment the problem. I picked the 3 most common ones that I see when teams are broken down and not functioning in a healthy way, and they're listed here. Blaming. That's the number one thing I see, where you're blaming another team member, you're blaming the student, you're blaming the parent, you're blaming something or someone other than getting to the root of the issue and getting to the solution. Blame is really easy for us to do as human beings. Everybody does it at some point in time or another. The thing is, we need to focus on what is the real issue here. Who is really responsible, and how do we get to where we can get past this issue instead of blaming. And again, that's where you need to try to leave your emotions at the door. Leave the attitude at the door. This is business. How are we going to solve the problem? If someone says something to you in the meeting that just really rubbed you the wrong way, or was not factual, or was hurtful, and I've heard a lot of things in meetings. I have. Even when I'm there, it's like, really? I've heard some crazy, asinine things. The best recommendation I have for you is to ignore it. Yeah, that's hard. It's hard. But it can only lead to blaming or to getting off topic. Now we're talking about the silly thing you said instead of what we were talking about. Or now we're going to talk about our feelings instead of what we're really talking about. Sometimes it's best to let silly things look silly by not addressing them. Let them stand alone in the room with no power given to those statements and no acknowledgement given to those statements. Do you hear what I'm saying? If someone says something adversarial or unkind or unhelpful, when you address it, you're giving weight to it. You're giving credence to it, power to it. Ignore it, and it usually shows itself for what it is, and now we can move on. And you're also showing that you are approaching problems and off-task comments professionally, thoughtfully, and you are calm, and you are staying on focus. It elevates you in their minds as far as respect goes. You are the key team member, remember. You got to act like it. So as hard as it is to ignore some things sometimes it's the best thing to do. I would also label the second most common problem that I see in meetings or in communication after meetings or before meetings is excuses. This is another symptom of faulty thinking, where now we're beyond blaming each other or the child or the FCAT or whatever we're blaming, and now we're on excuses. And I see excuses fall into two categories usually. We're making excuses for the school, and we're making excuses for our child. Be very careful about both. And I want to say this as gently and lovingly as I can. Sometimes it's easy for us to make excuses for our students when the responsibility should be on our students sometimes. If they're refusing to work, maybe it's not a manifestation of their disability. Maybe it's just they have an attitude about not working. I mean, come on, let's be real. Sometimes they don't want to work. Or maybe their problem is not necessarily something that is not being addressed by the school. Maybe it's something where they need to take responsibility for their behavior. So let's be careful about that. We want to work with the school, support them at home with actions that are being suggested or recommended at school. If there was, let's say, just throwing something out randomly, let's say a student lied about, I did my work in class today, and they really didn't. The teacher communicates with you, not about the work that wasn't done, but about the lying, let's say. That's something you can help support the school with at home. Let's don't say, well, he lied because he has autism. Well, really? You see? Let's think about not making excuses for our students. Let's think about how we can help them have success at school. And say, okay, well, let's deal with the lying issue, but now how are we going to work out getting the assignment completed? Then you might get some support from the school to get the assignment completed within a reasonable amount of time. The other side of that is excuses from the school-based team. You might hear things, well, we don't have enough funding. We don't have the staff. We didn't do that last year. You know, there's all kinds of excuses you can hear. That should be taken with a grain of salt. You've heard that term before. Take it into consideration, but don't take it on face value. Ask the W questions. Excuses should always be addressed with W questions. Why? When? How? Let's talk about this. Not with a knee-jerk anger reaction, not with a knee-jerk blaming reaction. We want to get to the root of this. Okay, if you say that's the case, let's talk about that excuse. Let's see how we can break it down and get to where we can get to a solution. So I see that a lot, both ways. The other thing I see a good bit, but not quite as much as blaming excuses, is stonewalling or escalating. And what I mean by stonewalling is, I'm going to sit in that meeting, I'm not going to talk to that person, and I'm not going to, you're refusing to have communication, you're refusing to participate, you're refusing to give information when they ask for it, you're stonewalling them. Or they're stonewalling you. That's bad too. So I would encourage you to break down the wall, have that regular, relevant, positive communication. That's one of the main reasons why I suggest the RRP, the regular, relevant, positive communication, to prevent the stonewalling. It also prevents the escalating, which we'll talk in a second about. But you want to, even if you don't feel like talking and participating, you really got a problem with that person, I could just jump over the table and, yeah. You don't want to stonewall them. You want to try to have some sort of communication with them. Think about why that's important. Picture your child's face every time you're having a knee-jerk reaction and say, will this serve my ultimate goal? To have success for my child. That's the ultimate goal. Then you've got all these goals underneath. Does this serve the ultimate goal of hoping to promote success and progress for your child that year? And if it doesn't, you leave it at the door. Next thing is the escalating. And what I mean by that is you're getting worked up, somebody said something silly in the meeting or something you totally disagree with that was hurtful or not helpful, and you're going to escalate by addressing it. By saying, well, you did that, and it just starts doing this, building and building and building, and now you've got some big snowballed issue and it never should have gotten there. Don't do that. I've actually been in a couple of meetings where there was yelling and crying and screaming. going on, I would consider that escalating. That at that point, if you feel that you are getting to the point where you can't take it anymore, you absolutely have the right. It's one of your rights to say, can we adjourn just briefly? So, and you can be honest. You can say, I need to take a break. Can we just please adjourn for 15 minutes or 5 minutes or half an hour, or whatever you want to say. And you go out and throw water on your face. You go double over and breathe. You go do whatever you need to do to regain some control and composure. Call your best friend and say, I need to vent really quick to you. Help me out here. Or, say a little prayer or whatever you got to do. You have the right to do that. You don't have to stay in that environment and swim through it if it's really that uncomfortable for you at that moment. I've been in meetings where the school team asked for an adjournment, a brief adjournment, just so they could go out and chat or go to the bathroom or whatever they needed to do. So before it gets to that point, take a break. I encourage you. And don't let it get to that point. Don't let the school let it get to that point. If you feel like tensions are rising on their end, say, well, you know what, I think we need to adjourn today and meet back when we're all fresh and rested, and we can think about this and get back together, and here are some dates I have in mind. Again, come to the meeting with your dates already laid out, your times laid out that you're available. The reason why I think this is so important is because faulty thinking leads to more problems. And I wrote it down for here for you to see the progression. You're thinking of that ultimate goal always, I hope, when you're doing the monitoring of your child's program, when you're communicating with the school. What it leads to is this. It leads to building an effective team, which is very important for your child's success, which can lead to ineffective strategies for your child's program. And when I mean strategies, I mean what you're seeing in the classroom that's working for your child. It can also lead to inefficiency and lag time for services for your child. We're arguing about it. What's happening with your child's services? They're not getting decided on. They're not getting implemented. They're sitting in the corner over here until we can figure out how to agree, right? That's lag time. And so those supports are not getting put in place. There's people not agreeing to do it, so it's not getting done. So we want to get to the point where you're agreeing and having something in place. These are the three things I want you to think about. How you can actively work toward preventing in your meetings. And some of that's us, parents. Some of that's us. I would like to share with you this list. I have a fairly good relationship with both school districts. They see me as a friend and not a foe. I want you to know that that's true because I do promote healthy partnerships between parents and the school system. However, I am most certainly in the parents' corner, always. So you guys are going to get my support first and foremost. But because we have that healthy relationship, they've shared with me some things that they would like for you to know or for me to know working with you. And I thought you'd be pleasantly surprised by some of these things. First of all, they want you to be educated about IDEA 2004. Remember again, we said IDEA was revised in 2004. Lots of great things were added in there. So that's why we call it IDEA 2004. They really want you to know the law. Does that surprise you? The more you know about it, the less anxiety there is, and the more of a two-way communication you can have with them. You're speaking the language again. Okay, this is a federally mandated act, so they have to do it. So it's not like they're trying to hide something from you. So if you're aware of it, they're aware of it, we're on the same page. How that shakes out is a whole nother thing, but they want you to be aware of it. They also want you to be familiarized with the IEP purpose, process, and protocol, and we talked about that in our last session, the 10 steps to developing and monitoring an IEP. from what I've heard, the feedback that I've gotten is parents don't seem to really understand what's in the IEP and why it's in the IEP and the order that we do things when we develop one. Because you might remember from your last IEP development that they have to go in a certain order. They talk about the plot, the present levels of performance. Then they go through and give the assessments. Then they go through and talk about testing and accommodations. And then toward the end, they're going to talk about placement, right? They're not talking about services and placement until the end. Well, there's a reason for that. We're going to develop goals and everything else first. Because placement is determined by the student's need. And the student's need has to be addressed in goals and accommodations. Then we determine placement and services. So there's an order of things in the IEP for a reason. And they would like for you guys to understand that. So you're getting some of that through this class. They'd also like for you to participate in the meetings actively and share your thoughts and concerns and include your child if appropriate. Everything we've talked about so far, they agree with that. They want to hear you speak up more is what I'm hearing. That's the feedback I'm getting. Believe it or not, they don't want you to just sit there and go, well, whatever you say, I'm okay with that. I guess you're the expert. They want you to speak up more. They want you to help develop the goals. They want you to help talk about what accommodations you think are appropriate for your child, what's working in private therapy. They want information from you. They want you to feel like you're a part of what's going on, which was very encouraging for me to hear. I hope that is for you too. They also, and this was no surprise to me, should be to you as well, they want you to view the school-based team as a group of professionals that are dedicated to caring about and assisting your child in his education. Well, yes. That's kind of a duh thing, if I can say that. They want to be respected. They want to be seen as experts. They want to be appreciated, just like we do. So I had to put that in there because I heard it over and over and over again. Because what I'm hearing is they don't necessarily feel that from some parents, not all parents, especially in an adversarial situation where the team's not really clicking and getting along and communicating well. That's why I say to you, it's important as far as communication is concerned to acknowledge at the end of your meetings and that thank you note, even if you just want to go, I really thought this was terrible, I don't want to ever see you people again, whatever you're really thinking, at least acknowledge that they gave you their time and their input, whether you agree with it or not. And it's just a grateful acknowledgement. It goes a long way. They're going to reciprocate with communication back to you. Now you're keeping that line of communication open. You're able to discuss things. So, yes, they want you to see them as the professionals and that they care. They also want for you to be aware that the school is obligated to support the educational needs of the student, not necessarily the clinical needs. We talked about that last session, that you have a medical diagnosis for your child perhaps, but then you have the educational diagnosis known formally as the program that your child is in. And IDEA, again, states that we're only to address the educational needs or how your child's disability affects them in the learning environment. Anything else, they are not required by law to address. So you could say, well, you know, in private therapy we're doing this, or Dr. So-and-so recommends this. Well, yes, that's great and good, but does it apply to the educational setting? Does it help them with their learning experience? And if it does not, it's not considered an educational need. It's very complicated sometimes, but that's important for us to understand as family members. And most importantly, and I put this last, but it is the most important thing that I heard over and over again, is that they want for you to understand and articulate to them that your child's needs so that the team can identify and address them as accurately and effectively and as soon as possible. There's no lag time. There's no figuring out for the first 9 weeks what your child can do or can't do, responds well to, doesn't respond well to. We've got it already, hopefully, that primer or some form of that given to the team. And then maybe we can bring in team members from the previous year to help discuss that with the team in their educational ease language, or have a report ready for them. So it's very important for us to articulate that to the team, and they see that as the most important thing. And I recently had a meeting with someone in Santa Rosa County that shared that again and said, if parents would just tell us what they feel is the most pressing needs and how to address them, we would spend so much less time wasted in the classroom. And I totally agree with that. So it is a little bit of work on your part to just sit down and go, oh my gosh, today was so overwhelming and I just can't think one more minute about anything. If you can just put some things down here and there and say, oh yeah, what about this? Or, oh yeah, their OT at, Sacred or wherever said this. Just jot it down. But I was impressed by this list because it's actually encouraging team participation with you guys. Nothing critical. Did you notice that? Now, I've got some tips for you guys, and they're on your sheet as well. For you, the parent advocate or the parent partner, the empowered parent partner, IEP meetings can be called by you at any time of the year, and you can have as many as necessary to get the program dealt with effectively. They can be called by the school or by you. Don't want to say, well, they didn't tell me when we're going to have our next meeting. I really feel like we need one. Well, that's the perfect time for you to ask for one. And you could have 2, 1, 16, whatever's appropriate to monitor your child's program. Then it's important for you to know that the IEP meetings can at any point be adjourned and reconvened upon your request. We've talked a good bit about that, so I want to make sure you understand that. And that IEPs can be amended throughout the year. In other words, we don't have to write a brand new IEP, go through all the goals again. If there's one minor change to make, IDEA 2004 allows for that, and it's called an amendment. And we have an amendment page added to the front of the IEP. Sometimes it's in the back, depending on what district and state you're in. And it's a simple document. We don't have to reconvene the entire team to do that. Wonderful addition to the law. And that can happen every day, every month, once a year. It's whatever the need is. And of course, I'm exaggerating. Don't do it every day. Hopefully, they've got your plan, your program, where we've got it covered for a period of time of development. Then I can suggest to you that meetings do not have to have a set time limit and must be scheduled at your convenience. I hear this a lot. Parents say, well, they told me that we can only meet for 30 minutes, or they told us we can't meet for more than 2 hours, or whatever time limit they've heard from the school team. That is not factual. There is no time limit for IEP meetings, period. There is nothing that says you have to attend a meeting that is not at your convenience. It is in the law that states they must be scheduled at your convenience. Now, does that mean Sunday afternoon at 5 o'clock? No. Let's be reasonable and say it should be during or around school hours, because these are people who give of their time and work. And it should be on a day that you can arrange to be off work or arrange for childcare, whatever the situation is for you. Again, this is why you give a range of dates and times, so there's no confusion or argument about the meeting time. And they don't have to have a limit at all. You can say, well, let's try to meet for 2 hours. Okay, but if we need to adjourn and reconvene, let's go ahead and decide on a date. You see, your meeting could go all day, technically. I wouldn't advise it, because we're all going to get tired and stressed out and want to go jump off a cliff or whatever we want to do. So whatever your tolerance level is, and everybody has a different one, for how long you can sit in a chair and discuss something and not go blind looking at the screen, then set that time in your mind and then ask for an adjournment, reconvening. But I hear that a good bit. They told us we can only meet for this amount of time, Amy. And I'm like, okay, that's not true. Then I would suggest to you, if your child does not attend your meetings, to bring a photo of your child, because sometimes your team members are not regularly attending your meetings. For instance, if you had a re-eval recently and you've got the school psychologist in there or someone from the district that did some testing, BCBA that came in and did a functional behavior assessment on your child, etc., that don't normally attend meetings, never saw your child, let's pretend, it's good to have the picture. Some people wear a button with their face on it. It's just a nice reminder that this is why we're here. This is who we're here for. They're in the room. Let's keep that in mind. Some people put it in their binder, that 3-ring binder, on the front page, so that when they're sitting at the table, they've got it right there too. You may bring a friend or a relative to your meeting, or anyone with an interest in your child's education. That could be your private therapist. That could be a parent-partner support consultant. That could be your neighbor who watches your child sometimes. Could be your aunt, your uncle. Whoever you think is going to have an active participation role in your child's education, knows your child, can speak to it. Maybe even be the silent morale booster for you in the meeting. Try not to go alone if you can. It's good to have some support with you, even if they don't speak at all in the meeting. You may request school or county personnel to attend. Did you know that? Let's say you want the ESC department head at Escambia County or from Santa Rosa County to attend your meeting. Have a good reason why you want to get them out of their busy day to attend your meeting. But you can ask for anyone to attend your meeting as long as they have a relevant reason for being there. And you have the right to do that and have them put it on the meeting notice. If a team member cannot attend your meeting, you have the right to ask for a written excusal. And it's usually a form that comes out that says this person will not attend the meeting, and you have to give your consent for that. Or you can say, well, I really wanted the OT there, and since they can't be there, can we reschedule our meeting to a time when they can be there? You have that right as well. But let's say you would rather have certain somebody at your meeting. You have the right to ask for that. You may request also to get records before your meeting. Again, you've got some letters in your packet that I gave you, and that's not on your slide, but I wanted to bring it up. Anything you need to help you prepare for the meeting that you don't have on hand that the school might have a record of, you can ask for that ahead of the meeting. So make sure you put your request in writing. And then, important thing for me to leave with you, and again I'm putting the important things at the bottom of the screen, is to remember the power of the pen. That means that letters never get ignored because they're legal. So if you have anything that you want to share with the school, request of the school, put it in writing. They can't ignore it. They can ignore an email. They can ignore face-to-face. They can ignore a phone call, a fax. They cannot ignore a letter by law. They have 10 days to respond to it. I don't suggest it unless it's something very important like requesting records, or you're having an issue and you need to get it resolved in a timely manner. If you're asking for eligibility determination, things like that. Look through your packet and you'll see some of the letters that I'm talking about. And then again, with the power of the pen, don't sign the IEP at the meeting unless you're 100% sure everything in there is right, that you agree with everything, that they didn't forget to save on the customized drop-down menu. Take it home, review it. That's the power of the pen for you. You're giving consent on a legally binding document that will carry for a year if you don't amend it. So consider it very, very important. Those are my suggestions and tips for you now that you are parent advocates and partners in your child's program. I'm going to do a little plug here because we did start a new program at Autism Pensacola. You are in one of the many programs that we have, which is the Parent Empowerment Program. That is a class that's going to keep going on thanks to our generous Impact 100 grant. But we have just started the Parent Partner Support Program, and that is a program that you can take part in if you need additional IEP support or support with your team or advice on, and I'm the lead on that program. Hopefully we will get some more volunteers that are trained and empowered to join us to help parents with basic questions and concerns about their IEP. But there's the website. You've got it in your packet, and you can check it out further.